Regency Christmas. The Holidays with Bridgerton and Jane Austen. Thank you to Book of the Month for sponsoring this video. Dearest gentle reader, we may have to wait another year or two before we can return to the glittering balls and amorous adventures of the London social season. But have you ever wondered what the Bridgerton family and the rest of the town got up to at Christmas? Elegant candlelit royal dinners, concerts and caroling with family and friends, stealing kisses during cheeky parlor games, and raucous Twelfth Night masquerade balls. We'll explore the novels and real life of Jane Austen and reports from newspapers and the royal family ledger to find out what was going on in December in the early 1800s. So don your silk empire waist gown or tie your cravat as we travel back in time to enjoy a Regency Christmas. Where were the ton in December? Bridgerton is centered around the ton, from the French le bon ton, meaning the good tone, or those with the proper manners. They were the highest echelon of British society, those with peerage titles, dukes, marquises, earls, viscounts, and barons, and their wealthy family members. Bridgerton is always set in the summer because that was when the London social season, aka the marriage mart, occurred. Because these rich remnants of feudalism were sprinkled all across the country, it was hard for them to gather together. But every year the House of Lords met from January to July. Dukes didn't want their daughters to marry farmers, so they brought the whole family to their London mansions and townhouses. The season officially kicked off in May with Queen Charlotte's Ball and the presentation of debutantes. For the rest of the summer, young lords and ladies attended a flurry of balls, operas, and other events, in an attempt to bag a spouse with the highest title and largest fortune possible. And if they were extremely lucky, someone they actually liked. At the end of August, when hunting season began, the ton packed up and headed back to their country piles. Ladies who had found a match went to their new groom's estate and got down to the important business of making an heir. And those who had not put their marital aspirations in mothballs until spring. But romance didn't have to hibernate for a whole 9 months. Christmas was a time when members of the ton got together again for winter flurries of country house parties and balls, and another chance to meet that special someone. If you were a rung below the peerage and part of the landed gentry, you would be in the excellent company of Jane Austen and her heroines Emma Woodhouse, Elizabeth Bennet, and Eleanor and Marianne Dashwood. Some of the wealthiest untitled gentlemen could afford for their children to take part in the summer season, in the hopes of bagging a rich and titled spouse. But many were content for their offspring to marry members of the gentry or clergy from their local area. In which case, Christmas was an excellent time to come together and scout out potential partners. Which is why Christmas pops up much more in Austen's novels than in Bridgerton. In Pride and Prejudice, Caroline Bingley writes, "I sincerely hope your Christmas in Hertfordshire may abound in the gaiety which the season generally brings." The Bennet family had relatives come to stay for a week, during which time they visited friends or had guests every day. Towards the end of the novel, after Elizabeth is betrothed to Mr. Darcy, she writes to her aunt, "You are all to come to Pemberley for Christmas," the country estate she would eminently become lady of. In Mansfield Park, Sir Thomas gives a Christmas ball for Fanny and William, and in Sense and Sensibility, John Willoughby dances the night away from 8 o'clock until 4 in the morning. Inclement weather and the reliance on horse-drawn carriages had a tendency to make Christmas plans dicey. In Emma, the heroine and her family attend a Christmas Eve party at the home of family friends, the Westons. Her father complains that he does not wish to leave the comfort of his own house to trudge out in the snow. Another guest, local vicar Mr. Elton, is more optimistic, remarking, "At Christmas, everybody invites their friends about them, and people think little of even the worst weather. I was snowed up at a friend's house once for a week." He doesn't mention how his host felt about entertaining guests for 7 days instead of 1. Jane Austen herself had 2 notable romances over the Christmas season. In December 1795, a 20-year-old Jane met Tom Lefroy, an Irish law student who was staying with her neighbor. She described Tom as a very gentlemanlike, good-looking, pleasant young man. During the flurry of holiday events, the pair hit it off, and Jane wrote feverishly to her sister Cassandra, "I am almost afraid to tell you how my Irish friend and I behaved. Imagine to yourself everything most profligate and shocking in the way of dancing and sitting down together." She hoped for an offer of marriage, but the relationship was not to be, as Tom had no money to support a wife. In anticipation of his January departure, Jane wrote, "My tears flow as I write at this melancholy idea." By December 1802, Jane was 27 and considered on the shelf, but she was more concerned with the novels she was adding to the shelf. That Christmas, she went to stay with her friends, Althea and Catherine Bigg. Their younger brother, Harris, who was 22, had just completed his education at Oxford. He revealed that he'd always had feelings for Jane and proposed. Though she was not in love with the plain, awkward young man, marriage to Harris would have made her the lady of a fine house and solved her family's financial problems. Jane initially accepted, but that night she had a change of heart. She withdrew her acceptance the next morning and left the party before Christmas arrived. Her feelings on the matter have been lost to history, but perhaps she didn't want a domestic life to interfere with her true passion, writing. The buildup to Christmas. It might seem like a modern phenomenon to see Christmas festivities creeping earlier and earlier into the year, but this dates back to well before the Regency. The first event on the Christmas calendar was Stir Up Sunday, the 4th Sunday before Christmas, which occurs in late November. The family would gather together to make Christmas pudding, aka plum pudding. This classic recipe may date back to the Middle Ages. It was outlawed by Puritan Oliver Cromwell, along with Christmas itself. But it is said that George I reintroduced Christmas pudding by enjoying it at his first Christmas dinner as king in 1714. Whether true or not, this earned him the nickname the Pudding King, and Christmas pudding a place of honor at the Georgian holiday table. On Stir-Up Sunday, each member of the family must take a turn to stir the pudding from east to west to honor the journey of the Magi. It is traditionally made with 13 ingredients to represent Jesus and the 12 apostles. Recipes call for raisins, known as plums at the time, other chopped dried fruit, suet, which is beef or mutton fat, treacle, breadcrumbs, flour, eggs, and spices. Once stirred up, the pudding is boiled or steamed in a bag, then soaked in brandy. The pudding is made well in advance so the ingredients have plenty of time to absorb the liquor, which helps to preserve them. On December 6th, St. Nicholas Day is celebrated. This holiday has always been and continues to be a bigger deal in continental Europe, particularly amongst Catholics. But in Regency England, friends would visit each other and exchange gifts on this day. One of the most popular presents to give during the Regency was a book. Princess Charlotte of Wales received the new novel Sense and Sensibility from her favorite uncle. She loved it and wrote back that she identified with Marianne. As an avid reader myself, a book is a gift I'm always thrilled to receive. That's why I get so excited when I see my blue box from Book of the Month arrive in the mail. They select the best, quality new fiction from up-and-coming authors everyone's talking about. This month, I got in the holiday spirit with the thrilling romance, The Most Wonderful Crime of the Year by Ally Carter. And I got lost in the epic life experiences of two childhood sweethearts from 1940s Shanghai with Homeseeking by Carissa Chen. Book of the Month has the best prices on new release hardcover fiction, plus free shipping and loyalty rewards. So treat yourself and the book lovers in your life to a Regency-era gift with a modern twist, and enroll in Book of the Month. New members can use my code TINSEL, that's TINSEL, to get your first book for only $5. And now back to history. December 21st was St. Thomas's Day, during which the poor, widowed, and elderly would go Thomasing, venturing from door to door, asking for donations of food and coin to brighten their Christmas. While this was yet another holiday based around a Catholic saint, not cool with Protestant English, there was a lot of poverty in the 1800s. George III's Enclosures Act significantly increased the wealth gap, and the Napoleonic Wars between 1803 and 1815 left many destitute widows and orphans. The words to an old English Christmas song describe the scene. "Christmas is coming, the geese are getting fat. Please spare a penny for the old man's hat. If you haven't got a penny, a halfpenny will do. If you haven't got a halfpenny, God bless you." Newspapers of the time chronicled many community events during the festive season. In Bath, there was an annual Christmas Eve charity concert. In 1788, Handel's Messiah was performed at the Assembly Hall. The Stafford Hall hosted a concert followed by a ball on December 29, 1800. The same year, the Theatre Royal in Newcastle staged a pantomime of Jack and the Giant Killer on the 23rd. Pantomime, or over-the-top musical comedies, mainly for children, became a quintessential British holiday tradition in the Victorian era, but they started to become popular during the Regency. Finally, on December 24th, Christmas Eve, it was time to get truly festive with decorations. Homes and churches were decked with plants that were still green in December, primarily holly and ivy. But bay, rosemary, lavender, and other evergreens were used. In addition to looking festive, the herbs filled the home with lovely scents. Northern Europeans have been decking their halls with boughs of holly since ancient pagans celebrated the festival of Yule. The tradition of bringing nature inside to brighten up the dark winter carried through the Middle Ages and is still popular today, if slightly more plastic. In the Regency, it was considered bad luck to decorate before Christmas Eve. Lady Whistledown would be shocked to see how early we decorate now. One way in which Regency Christmas decor differed from the medieval was the addition of oranges. This tropical fruit originated in China and first arrived in Europe with the Crusaders. In the 16 and 1700s, many royals built orangeries, where the warm weather treat could be grown in cold climates. The palaces of Versailles, Kensington, and Kew all have orangeries. And whatever the royals had, the peerage, then the gentry, and then commoners wanted too. By the Regency era, oranges weren't exactly a halfpenny a dozen, but they were affordable enough for special occasions, and were often included in the holiday decor of well-to-do households. The citrusy scent was often enhanced by piercing the orange with spicy cloves to make a pomander. Ancient Druids used mistletoe in fertility potions during their midwinter festivals. Not a great idea, as the plant is highly toxic. Many churches still won't allow the pagan plant under their roofs. But common people kissed under it because of its supposed powers of fertility. Public displays of affection were not considered proper by the mammas of the time, so boughs of mistletoe were rarely found in upper-class English drawing rooms. But they could be spotted downstairs in the servants' halls, or in the homes of farmers, where those who weren't quite so morally rigid might enjoy an embrace or two. One festive decoration which was conspicuously absent from the Regency home was the Christmas tree. In 1800, Queen Charlotte, a German princess and the wife of King George III, threw a Christmas ball. She invited all the children of Windsor to the Queen's Lodge, and they were gobsmacked to see a whole decorated yew tree in the middle of the drawing room. This was the first English Christmas tree. The Tannenbaum is an ancient German pagan tradition, which was Christianized by Martin Luther in the 1500s. He added candles and apples to symbolize the Garden of Eden. The bright red orbs evolved into ornaments. Charlotte introduced this beloved childhood memory to her own offspring years earlier. Each Christmas, she decorated a single yew branch with the assistance of her ladies-in-waiting, and then had the court gather to sing carols and share gifts. But in 1800, she pulled out all the stops. A party guest described the scene. From the branches hung sweetmeats, almonds and raisins in paper, fruit and toys most tastefully arranged, illuminated by small wax candles. After the company had walked round and admired the tree, each child obtained a portion of the sweets and a toy. Then all returned home quite delighted. Queen Victoria, who was born in 1819, had a Christmas tree every year while she was growing up in Kensington Palace. And the Duke of Portland had a Christmas tree as early as 1807. But unless you were close to the royals and or German, most people in England had not yet caught on to the delights of a Christmas tree. In 1848, the Illustrated London Times published an engraving of Queen Victoria, her German husband Prince Albert, and their children around a Christmas tree at Windsor Castle. After that, Brits high and low considered a Tannenbaum an essential part of the holiday season. In the Regency, the centerpiece of Christmas was still the Yule log. A large log would be chopped down on Christmas Eve and carried inside, wrapped in hazel twigs, and lit from an ember saved from the previous year's log. This was a symbol of continuity, and it was very bad luck if your new log wouldn't catch fire. Now that we've decked the halls in Regency style, let's begin our Christmas Day. The morning started with a visit to church. Father Christmas, aka Santa Claus, and gifts for children didn't join the holiday culture until the Victorian era, so little Regency Timmy would have to be content with a family party instead. Christmas dinner was a grand feast. Lots of extra guests meant a tremendous amount of food to prepare, and dishes that could be made in advance and served cold were popular. Roast beef, goose, boar's head, and minced meat pies were enjoyed. The now traditional turkey, a bird imported from North America, was available, but it didn't become the ubiquitous Yuletide protein until the late Victorian era. For the ton, venison shot on your own estate earlier that autumn was the ultimate centerpiece. Seasonal vegetables like carrots, parsnips, sprout, and cabbage were also consumed. As the grand finale of the meal, the Christmas pudding, made all those weeks ago and now saturated with brandy, was brought in. It was doused with even more liquor, topped with a sprig of holly, and then set on fire. The blue flames would dazzle the assemblage. Once extinguished, the pudding was served with hard sauce, a creamy custard fortified with even more brandy, making for a very tipsy treat. Candy was also a crucial element of Christmas, for those who could afford it. Sugar was still quite expensive, so having ample sweets was a great way for the ton to show off. Sugar plums, ginger nuts, candy canes, gingerbread, and butter shortbread were all popular. Syllabub was made from milk, brandy, and wine. It was originally drunk, but the Georgians whipped it with gelatin to make a pudding. Unfortunately, chocolate bars were not developed until 1847, so you'd have to choose between Mr. Darcy and chocolate. In the novel Persuasion, Jane Austen sets the scene of a family Christmas. Immediately surrounding Mrs. Musgrove were the little Harvilles. On one side of the table occupied by some chattering girls, cutting up silk and gold paper, and on the other were trestles and trays bending under the weight of brawn and cold pies, where riotous boys were holding high revel, the whole completed by a roaring Christmas fire which seemed determined to be heard in spite of all the noise. Mr. Musgrove made a point of paying his respects to Lady Russell and sat down close to her for 10 minutes, talking with a very raised voice, but for the clamor of the children on his knees, generally in vain. It was a fine family piece. In the grandest dining room in the land, at Kew Palace, King George III and Queen Charlotte enjoyed an elegant dinner with their 15 children and over 100 close friends and family. They gathered round a long mahogany table, dressed for Christmas with crisp white linen and evergreen foliage, flickering candles and a Yule log crackling in a massive stone fireplace. Let the ladies' jewels, crystal chandeliers, and golden candelabras sparkle. A parade of footmen carried in dozens of dishes, which they laid along the table. This was called service à la Française, in the French style, meaning all dishes were placed on the table at once, and diners served themselves what was nearby. Service à la Russe, the Russian style, where multiple courses are served to each guest by a footman, did not become popular until the 1870s. In 1788, the center of the royal Christmas table was a roast wild turkey, caught in Richmond Park. It was accompanied by a large Christmas pie, 18 pounds of roast beef, pork, a pheasant, 2 wild ducks, 9 cutlets of mutton, brawn, and plates piled high with minced pies. For a bit of green, King George's favorite, spinach was served, along with stewed endive and dishes of sole and pike. For the sweet tooths, apple pie, small pastries, and an entertainingly wobbly jelly were presented. After dinner, upper-class party guests retired to the drawing room for music and games. A toast to the season was made by the head of the household. The party might be interrupted by the welcome sight of carolers or wassailers going door to door, singing songs and asking for food and drink. This was a common practice from the Middle Ages through the 19th century. Carolers were usually commoners, while the ton and landed gentry were the ones doling out the treats and booze. Familiar carols that would have been heard in the Regency include God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, The First Noel, Deck the Halls, Here We Come A-Wassailing, We Wish You a Merry Christmas, and the 12 Days of Christmas. Ladies and gentlemen also got a chance to belt out their favorite carol around the piano inside the parlor. No Regency party would be complete without parlor games. One of the most popular was Snapdragon. Hot brandy was placed in a wide, shallow bowl. Raisins were thrown in, and the whole thing was set on fire. Players had to pluck out the flamin' hot raisins and extinguish them in their mouths. Burned fingers and tongues were all in good fun, as long as no one overturned the bowl and set the drapes on fire. Health and safety ruined that bit of death-defying Christmas fun. If you didn't want to singe your Christmas dress, you could enjoy a fun game of elective drowning, aka bobbing for apples. Slippery orbital fruits were floated in a bucket of water, and players had to plunge their faces in and try to grab an apple with their mouth. Here's hoping no one at the party had a bad case of typhoid. The development of germ theory in the 1860s splashed cold water on that party game. If a Christmas hostess wanted to spare the carpet, but still get her guests' hearts racing, she might suggest a game designed to allow the usually segregated sexes to mingle. The book Winter Evening Pastimes, or The Merrymaker's Companion, written by Rachel Revel in 1825, suggests a few daring diversions for the younger set. In The Bridge of Sighs, a gentleman gets on all fours and a lady sits on his back. She sighs audibly as he carries her around the room, stopping before each gentleman, who kisses her and wishes her a pleasant ride. Blind Man's Bluff was a popular precursor to tag. One person was blindfolded and then had to chase others around the room, possibly grabbing a feel they might otherwise have not been permitted in polite society. A spicier version of the game involves a mystery lady sitting on the lap of a blindfolded gentleman, who must then use his hands to determine who she is. Other Regency variations on these games, like Hot Cockles and Poor Pussy, allowed otherwise uptight revelers to act silly. Even straight-laced games like charades, riddles, consequences, and whist could make hearts flutter with the added challenge of a kissing forfeit. Those who lost had to give up a kiss. One forfeit was called Kiss the Person You Love Best Without Disclosing the Secret. The gentleman had to kiss all the ladies present, so his crush remained concealed. A bit more physical was Kiss If You Can. The loser was paired with a partner of the opposite sex, and both knelt on the floor back to back. The gentleman had a chance to kiss her on the cheek while she tried to evade him. A motivated man might be able to get an arm around her waist and catch a kiss. Assuming you survived December 25th, the party didn't stop there. December 26th was St. Stephen's Day, when the servants who had worked hard to clean the house and cook all the food finally got a day off. They also received gifts from their employers in the form of boxes containing hand-me-down clothes and cash. The ton and gentry also handed out gift boxes to tenants and tradesmen. December 26th is still known as Boxing Day in the UK, but now it's more about shopping and returning unwanted gifts. And retail workers no longer get a prezzy and a day off. During the Regency, society was still centered around an agrarian lifestyle, and as winter was a slow time at the farm, the Christmas holiday was ideal for an extended break, to let off steam and enjoy the bounty of harvest. Rest, relaxation, and revelry continued until January 6th, the Feast of Epiphany, the day on which the three Magi presented gifts to Jesus. In Protestant England, it was better known as Twelfth Night, as it was the 12th day after Christmas. While Christmas Day tended to be a more intimate gathering, Twelfth Night was a big blowout party, kind of like New Year's Eve is now. This is the night we'd see massive, dazzling Bridgerton-style balls. And they weren't restrained dance card soirees. They were masquerade balls with over-the-top costumes, and plenty of food, drink, games, and merrymaking. No lemonade here. Punch bowls brimmed with wassail or mulled wine, spiced and garnished with apples. In the midst of the mayhem, evergreen decorations were torn down and burned on a bonfire. It was considered bad luck to keep your greenery in the house after Epiphany. On Twelfth Night in 1803, Sir Wilfrid Lawson, Baronet, threw a masked ball and supper at his estate, Brighton House. Guests dressed as Highland chiefs, sailors and their girls, nuns, Henry VIII, Mary Queen of Scots, Mr. Punch, a harlequin, a witch, a night watchman, Old Mother Shipton, a dancing bear, and more danced until 8 in the morning. You can't say the ton didn't know how to party. If anyone can get word to Shonda Rhimes, I would very much like to see a 12th night party in a future episode of Bridgerton. So why aren't we still making merry on Twelfth Night? The celebrations got so riotous that they met with the disapproval of prudish Queen Victoria, who outlawed them in 1870. By then, the Industrial Revolution was in full swing, and factory owners were all too happy to shorten the Christmas holiday and keep their workers sober and on the assembly line. Just as many of us feel today, Jane Austen was ready for a little quiet, sober time after making merry all Christmas season. After her guests departed in January 1807, she wrote to her sister, "I shall be left to the comfortable disposal of my time, to ease my mind from the torment of rice puddings and apple dumplings, and probably to regret that I didn't take more pains to please them all." And so, in the immortal words of Jane Austen, I wish you a cheerful, and at times even merry, Christmas. Happy holidays and a wonderful new year. Want even more tea on history? Check out the History Tea Time podcast. You can now follow History Tea Time on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment your thoughts, and check out my other history videos. You can also join my Patreon to support my work and get early access to all of my multi-part series. Thank you for watching.